Brandon Moreno takes on Loner Kavanagh this weekend at UFC Mexico City, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you a casuals guide to the main event, going over everything you need to know about these two fighters. Let's get into it. First off, let's talk about the fight career of Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno has had 17 fights in the UFC, so he has tons of experience in this matchup. He started off by getting submitted by Alexandre Pantoja on Tough. Then he got signed to a contract. He went 3-0 to start his career. Unfortunately, he then went 0-2, losing to Sergio Pettis and to once again Alexandre Pantoja. Then he was actually cut from the UFC. He makes a return. He goes 3-0 after going to a draw with Askar Askarov. People forget, man, Askar Askarov. That guy was a flyweight marauder, bringing KKF to a split, bringing Brandon Moreno to a split. That guy should have fought for the title at some point. People mention Muhammad Makayev, but they don't mention who came before him. Who was the first mover? It was Askar Askarov. Then Brandon gets the title shot against Davison Figueiredo. The fight goes to a majority draw. Then he fights Figueiredo 3 more times after that. He lost by decision, but he did get a round 3 submission victory over Figgy, and he got a round 3 doctor stoppage over Figgy. So ultimately, he went 2-1-1 in the quadrilogy. After the quadrilogy, and also after liver kick KOing Kai Kara France, he lost a split decision to Pantoja, who was the current champ before Van Fluke TKO'd him. And then he lost a split decision to Brandon Royval in Mexico City in a fight where Brandon Moreno was like a minus 300 favorite. Similar spot to what we see in this main event. After losing to Royval, he dominates Amir Albazi to a decision win, which in hindsight, is that even good? I don't think so. I mean, Amir Albazi is not really the best fighter, so dominated him to a decision victory. I'm not really putting a lot of stock into that. Then he goes tit for tat against Steve Erceg in another decision win. And in that fight, Steve Erceg was barely throwing with no power, not mixing in takedowns. It was kind of just an NPC versus an NPC in that fight. Like, it was just tit for tat. And if you scored it for Erceg, congrats. If you scored it for Moreno, congrats. Either way, it just was what it was. It was a nothing burger fight. Then he goes up against Tatsuro Taira, this time as an underdog, surprisingly. And in the first round, he nearly submits Taira, but he had him in this weird triangle for 5 minutes. Not sure what the game plan was, because then round 2 starts, Taira gets a takedown, gets to work, and TKOs him on the ground. And that is the last we've seen of Brandon Moreno. He's literally coming off the worst performance of his entire career. Now, what is the skill set of Brandon Moreno? Well, he's very well-rounded. I will give him that. And it is flyweight. So usually flyweights, they don't really throw out a lot of power. And their submission upside is not really high because they're going against guys that are equally good in the grappling department. Brandon Moreno fits that exact archetype. He's not throwing with a lot of power. He only has 3 KO wins in his 17 UFC fights. He's not really, going hard for submissions. He only has 3 sub wins in his 17 UFC fights. And if you look at his late wins, Amir Albazi, Steve Erceg, he was just fighting someone that wasn't really fighting back, fighting someone that wasn't throwing power his way, and he was just able to piece them up for 5 rounds. Loner Kavanagh is different than a Steve Erceg, than Amir Albazi. He actually will throw with power. He actually will mix in takedowns. So going against him in this main event is going to be a lot different than Moreno fighting an Albazi or an Erceg. Brandon Moreno has also been fighting guys that potentially would take him down. So when you see him fight recently, he's very, tentative to throw on the feet because he's worried about the takedown. Also, it seems like the speed and his punches and his kicks and his takedown attempts are going down fight by fight. He's only, 33 years old? But it does seem like he is aging a lot quicker than most flyweights. He's taken a lot of damage over his career. I'll say that. Now let's take a peek at Loner Kavanagh. What exactly does he bring to the table? Well, let's look over his fight career first. Loner's career started off pretty badly. As an amateur, he went 2-2-2, which is crazy. He went to a draw twice. He lost clean on the scorecards twice, and he found a victory twice. So as an amateur, you wouldn't think that Loner Kavanagh would be in this spot right now. But he becomes a pro, goes 2-0, gets a KO, gets a sub, gets signed to Cage Warriors, goes 4-0 at Cage Warriors, gets 2 KO finishes, then gets signed to Contender Series, gets a round 1 KO finish over Antoine Ho in a fight where no one thought that would be the outcome. They really thought that Kavanagh would win by decision or Ho would win by decision. No one was really anticipating a finish. And Loner check right hooks him in the face in the first round, gets the finish. Since then, we haven't really seen a Loner Kavanagh finish. He's fought 4 times in the UFC, but he has yet to win by finish. He goes up against Jose Ochoa, who's a very good flyweight prospect, and just edges out a 29-28 decision. Then he goes up against Felipe Dos Santos. He kind of plays it smooth, plays it calm, nearly gets knocked down in round 1. Then he utilizes takedowns to win rounds 2 and 3. Then he goes up against Charles Johnson. He actually dominates Charles Johnson in round 1, but he completely gasses out in round 2, gets knocked out brutally. Then the UFC were like, all right, you know what? Charles Johnson was a big step up. That was a tough matchup. We're going to give you Bruno Silva, but then Brandon Moreno, a fight appears at Mexico City. Loner Kavanagh takes the fight, and now we're here. So Kavanagh is coming off of his career worst performance against Charles Johnson. Brandon Moreno is coming off his career worst performance against Tatsuro Taira, so this should be interesting. Now, what is the style of Loner Kavanagh? Well, like I said, for Brandon Moreno, he's very well-rounded. He throws a lot of flashy strikes. He stands down on his punches, which gives him a lot of power for a flyweight. He also mixes in lots of takedowns. He's got a pretty good grappling game. He only has 1 career sub, but he does have a good grappling game. He's yet to really utilize the submission threat in his UFC fights so far. Each of Loner Kavanagh's fights, we can learn something a little different every single fight. So against Antoine Ho, he started fast, found the KO. Against Jose Ochoa, he's like, you know what? I'm going to start a little slower. He loses round 1, wins the decision because he wins rounds 2 and 3. Against Felipe Dos Santos, he starts out insanely slow, nearly gets finished in round 1, then cleanly wins rounds 2 and 3 on his way to a decision. Against Charles Johnson, he decided to flip back the page. Fights like he did against Antoine Ho, starts out really fast. This time he gasses out badly and gets knocked out by Charles Johnson. So for Loner Kavanagh, we can see any type of fighter in this fight. We can see him start out slow and progress as the fight goes on. We can also see him start out fast, potentially finish Moreno in the first 2 rounds, or if he starts out fast, he would gas out in rounds 3, 4, and 5. Kind of an up and down skill set for Loner Kavanagh. It's really just, what flavor of Loner are we going to get this weekend? Now I got reasons to pick both fighters. First off, with Brandon Moreno, do I even have to say it? He's got a tremendous UFC experience upside. Fought in way more UFC fights. He's been to 10 5-round UFC fights. He's gone 5-4-1 in those fights, but the fact that he's been to 10 of them, how do you prepare for that? That's going to be tough. He also has the height and reach advantages. He's also a former champion fighting in his hometown of Mexico. He mixes in takedowns, and he looks to have the better gas tank. We've seen him gas out in Mexico before, so that's why I said looks. Maybe gas is not going to be as prevalent as we think. Now, of course, I have reasons to pick Loner Kavanagh as well. He's 6 years younger. He's the much fresher fighter. He actually has finishing capabilities. He can knock out Brandon Moreno on the feet in this one. I don't see a world where Brandon Moreno knocks him out. He also throws with the same, if not more, volume than Brandon Moreno. It'll also be way better for the division if Loner wins. Not saying I dislike Brandon Moreno, but at this point in his career, he is just a stepping stone for prospects to get into the top 5. So Loner Kavanagh in the top 5, that would be highly entertaining, and it would be very interesting. Also, on the feet, I think Loner is just quicker. He's more spry, he's more agile, he's more athletic. Brandon Moreno, his agility is kind of going down. Loner Kavanagh is going up as he progresses fight by fight, and he can mix in takedowns. So, a lot of reasons, low-key, to pick Loner Kavanagh. Now, if you were to not pick either fighter, starting with Brandon Moreno, he's got no KO upside. His last finish was a doctor stoppage versus Figueiredo. Before that, it was a fluke KO liver shot to KKF. Before that, it was a fluke shoulder injury to Brandon Royval. Like, I don't anticipate Brandon Moreno knocking out Loner whatsoever. Also, no real submission upside. Like I said before, he does have 3 UFC submission wins in 17 fights. But when he gets fights to the ground, he's not really, like, super submission-oriented. Against Tatsuro Taira, he got the guy in a triangle for 5 straight minutes and didn't do anything. He actually was getting punched himself. How am I supposed to expect Moreno? Yes, I do expect him to have takedown upside, but I don't expect him to be able to actually submit Loner Kavanagh. He also seems to fight down to the level of his opponents. He goes tit for tat with his opposition almost all the time, and he's also prone to putting on stinkers in Mexico, losing to Royval, and he almost lost to Steve Erceg. And do I have to repeat myself, he looked his career worst against Tatsuro Taira, which just so happens to be the last time we've seen Moreno in the UFC octagon. Now, if you were to not pick Loner Kavanagh, there is a laundry list of reasons, don't get me wrong. His strength of schedule is horrific. He has not fought anyone close to the level of Brandon Moreno. He's also going to be at a huge size disadvantage. Like we said before, he gassed out badly against Charles Johnson. And like we said before, it's in UFC Mexico City, which is high elevation, and Loner just gassed out bad against Charles Johnson. So it leads me to believe that if Loner comes out firing quick, he's going to gas out against Brandon Moreno as well. He's also taking this fight on short notice in Mexico City, so the fact that we saw him gas out before, he's taking it on short notice in a place that makes fighters gas out quicker than usual, and he's also never competed in a 5-round fight. Brandon Moreno has almost every upside here to win this fight. But do I actually think Moreno wins? Let's get into the next slide. Ultimately, here is what I think will happen in this fight from start to finish. Get ready for the breakdown. So round number 1, I don't actually anticipate either guy grappling. I think both guys know it's in Mexico City. It's high elevation. If either decides to grapple, they will gas themselves out quicker than normal. So I think for 2 straight rounds, we're not going to see any grappling whatsoever. And as long as it stays striking and there's no wrestling or grappling for Loner to get gassed out by, I think Loner can low-key knock out Moreno in the first 2 rounds. And if he doesn't knock out Moreno, I think he can out-volume him and land the bigger shots in the first 2 rounds to go up 2-0 on Moreno. So heading into round 3, Moreno is down 2-0, I think. And at that point, Moreno's going to be like, you know what? Let me go to my bread and butter. Let me start employing takedowns. He starts going for takedowns. He has success in round 3, wins round 3. Round 4 starts. Now they're both huffing and puffing because wrestling has started for both of them. So round 4 starts. Loner's like, okay, I can't get taken down. Moreno just controlled me for 3+ minutes. Moreno's like, okay, well, I can't keep it on the feet because he's been piecing me up. Let me get the takedown. Moreno gets the takedown again, but this time he struggles hard for it. He wins round 4. So now, heading into round 5, it's 2-2. Moreno has had grappling success. Loner has had striking success. Both are extremely gassed out. Round 5 starts. They're going tit for tat in the striking. The takedowns don't work for Moreno. It is mainly standing for the 5th round. And then the bell hits, and we're like, who just won that fight? That was nearly impossible to score. Because even in rounds 3 and 4, when Moreno took down Loner, Loner landed some shots on the feet that can make you think Loner won those rounds. So ultimately, it is in UFC Mexico City. So the judges might give this one to Moreno if it hits the scorecards and if it's razor close. However, he fought Brandon Royval and lost a split decision there. So if the judges are willing to actually give the other fighter the win if they deserve it, I think Loner Kavanagh can win this. So I think Loner Kavanagh by rounds 1 or 2 KO is live. Outside of that, I think Loner Kavanagh can win this by decision. If he wins early, gets ahead early, gets out to a big head start, he's up 2-0 in the cards, he can win this fight. I know everything I said in this video would make you think Moreno, huge strength of schedule discrepancy, but the skill discrepancy is not as wide as the odds are making you believe. So ultimately, I'm going with Loner Kavanagh to win this fight by a split decision.